it didn't quite work out for whatever reason with the previous manager. Didn't get too much time to implement his ideas on that group of players. But they've brought in a manager who's got a bit of experience at this level, had a bit of success in relation to his time at Grimsby. And we know they'll be right up for it. Obviously, we got to watch the game on Tuesday night, and you could see the impact of a new manager in terms of the way they played in that fixture. And we're probably unlucky not to get more out of the game, even with 10 men towards the end of that game against Tranmere. But that's the opposition. My focus is always on ourselves and what we can achieve. Quite a long journey up there in the next couple of days. Hopefully we get through despite the weather, and hopefully the game is on first and foremost, and hopefully we produce a performance which could reflect what we've done in the last few days and probably the last few months. We're going into the not even the second half of the season. We've got 27 league games left and one definite FA Cup game, so 28 fixtures still to be played in pretty much around 4 months, which is an incredible start or an incredible thought. And there's still a little bit of unknown. I said it on Tuesday night. There's still a little bit of unknown in relation to what's going to happen in the coming weeks with the COVID situation only getting worse.
You mentioned there about you managed to watch the Barrow game on Tuesday. Now, of course, how frustrating was it for you to get all the way up to Newport and then for that game to get called off? I mean, we just pulled into the car park ourselves.
Yeah, look, you guys were the same. You prepare for a game. The players are prepared mentally and physically. You don't know your prep in relation to the opposition. And we travelled up, we'd had the pre-match. And then to get there and probably to see the pitch in the state it was, that game was never going to be on, in all honesty, and should have been called off earlier. But we'll leave that to the secretaries and the EFL to deal with. All we could do was get the lads back to the training ground as quickly as possible and get an hour's working on the Astro. And obviously it allowed me to watch the Barrow Tranmere game. So disappointing because you prepare, you've got your schedule, you work to that. And it always affects what's the build-up in a few days previously and a few days after the game as well. So it wasn't ideal, but the only shining light or the only positive was that it wasn't a million miles away. It was a 2.5 hour trip to Newport.
I mean, the game, you said as well you were going to make a few changes for that Newport game. Without giving too much away, are you going to perhaps stick with those changes for Barrow or maybe revert back to what you were previously?
We've got to assess it. But those changes were made on the back of a pretty gruelling game, Boxing Day, and our pitch affecting people's physical attributes for the following game. We saw certainly after the Tranmere game and then the Harrogate game, how the energy levels were low. So we'd made changes for the Newport game. But now I've got a fresh group, and I've got to pick a sensible team for what's going to be a difficult afternoon up at Barrow. Difficult pitch in some aspects, an opposition who will be right up for it with a new manager. We'll need to go up there as a group of men and stay as a group of men throughout that game. And some of those players are going to have to really step up to the mark. So, we've almost got to the stage now with, like I said, 28 games left. The team's going to change. I don't want to work to rotations and the same rotations, but we're going to have to select certain personnel for certain games and depending on what suits them best. And we'll be trying to do that this weekend.
Other than Pierce Sweeney, I believe we're looking pretty good in terms of injuries as well.
Yeah, and Josh Key's returned within the group, only sort of a bit of light training at the start of this week and then obviously a bit more today. So hopefully he'll travel. Be too soon to throw him straight into the heat of battle, but it's great he's come through that, and which we hope, and the early signs are there's no long-lasting effects on the back of his symptoms, which weren't too severe. Lewis Ward back available, Lewis Page back available, Jacob Priest obviously getting game time recently, Nigel in a better position. So only really Pierce at the moment who's unavailable through injury. There are some younger ones and some staff who are unavailable due to the COVID situation, but with no direct impact on the first team.
You said earlier about the uncertainty around the COVID situation. Would you be an advocate of a circuit breaker within the EFL?
I've not got all the answers, I'll be honest with you. I just don't want lower league football to continue the way it is. And when you see 7 games off on a full fixture list on a Tuesday night, that's a worrying time. I said on a previous interview, the only reason we've not got more games off at our level is because clubs at League 2 level aren't testing for whatever reason. Could be financial, could be for the risk of losing players when you get positive results back. But that's the only reason our games aren't getting called off at the moment. Anyone who is testing it is picking up the virus and picking up positive cases, and then therefore having games called off. So if we need a circuit breaker for a 2 to 3 week period where everything gets closed down, and then we have a little build up back into the fixtures and the season gets extended, then so be it. But I'm not sure lower leagues can continue the way it is, because we'll get to a point where the discrepancy between the amount of games left for each team is totally different. And then, like I said previously, we're already fitting in 28 games in a 4-month period. I think there's teams above us, maybe Accrington in the league above, who've got, you know, the best part of 30 plus games still to play. So it becomes an unfair playing field because it's through no fault of your own when your games are called off. So the EFL have got to make a decision, and make a decision pretty quickly with the wider mindset that health and safety comes first, and the safety of the players. And obviously, we're travelling across the country, and everyone else is going into tiers. Was it 3, 4, and 5, and God knows how many more tiers. So it's a difficult time, and difficult for people to make decisions. But something needs to be done sooner rather than later.
Let's take a look back at the last year, and I mean, it's been one hell of a year in more ways than one. Particularly during the pandemic, the supporters have been key. Every iFollow pass, every purchase in the club shop. I mean, how important have our supporters been to the club in this past year in these tough times?
You find out about each other at difficult times, and there's been no difficult time than the pandemic. Hopefully the club's shown itself in a good light. Hopefully the people representing the club have done that as well. And the supporters always do that, second to none. Said this time and time again, in relation to the way they support the team first and foremost, in relation to how they conduct themselves in and around certain situations which involve the team and the Exeter City brand, and keep on putting themselves forward. They do it time and time again, and that's credit to that group of fans. But the club's been through the mill, as has every club. But we're still lucky in relation to still being able to work, still being able to play. There's a lot of people being far greatly affected than ourselves. So we've got to be thankful for what we are. We're still stable as a football club, and we hopefully get through this in a stable position. And the footballing aspect of the club and the supporters should see a group of honest players, young players, some homegrown talent, but players who like representing the club and do it in the right manner and always give their all. We're certainly not perfect as a group of players or a group of staff, but if we fail in the right way. And we're looking forward to 2021. I think there'll be as much uncertainty, unfortunately, in the year to come as what we've just had this year, and it's certainly been an interesting time as a manager and for that group of players, but they seem to be getting through it, and with the help of the supporters, we'll get through it together.
To finish then, what's been your personal highlight of 2020, whether it be a standout moment or one particular game that you know stood out for you?
Like you look back on a year, there's so much has happened. All the way back to Forest Green New Year's Day last year, and being so close to it in the league campaign, in the top three for such a long period, and then to lose out, a few days before the season gets suspended, lose out on the automatic places. You have to pick yourself back up from that, and then you go through the playoff campaign, and that ends in devastating fashion. And then somehow you've got to quickly turn yourself to planning and preparing for the following season. And we barely recruited. We signed 2 players straight away, and then a third in Lewis Page late on. And we knew this season was all going to be about giving the young players a chance. But then you've seen the signs of what those young players can do. And there's been some fantastic stories in amongst what's probably been a dreadful year for a lot of people. But like I say, we've got to come through this year strongly and together and look forward. Like I say, we're certainly not out of the woods in relation to the pandemic yet, and it does look like it's getting worse before it gets better. Only this week we found out that we won't have our fans watching us for the foreseeable future back at the park, which is another blow. But people somehow, like we have done throughout the season, and like myself and my staff have done and my players, sometimes you got to keep picking yourself up, no matter what the world and life throws at you. You got to somehow pick yourself up and go again, in the belief that you're doing something right, and in the belief that you're going to achieve something at some stage, and that's what we're going to keep on working towards and striving for.